In the previous episodes, we looked at the many mysterious and enigmatic features of the Osireion, and now we are finally at the climactic finale, and I'm going to tell you what I think the Osireion was originally for. But first, in case you're new to my channel and don't know what the Osireion is, let me enlighten you. The Osireion is a megalithic marvel standing unassumingly at the rear of the Seti I temple in Abydos, Egypt. Its origin, according to archaeologists, coincides with the construction of that temple, and that would make it about 3,300 years ago. The architectural style, however, is more in line with the buildings of the Old Kingdom, dating back 4,500 years. Yet I propose that it actually predates even the Old Kingdom. The level of engineering prowess at this site is simply incomprehensible to the layman and profoundly humbling to any seasoned engineer or stonemason. It presents us with megalithic blocks of breathtaking size in rose granite. What we see of this building is but the tip of a 5-story megalithic stone iceberg, so it goes down about 15 meters. Let's also add to that the fact that it's built on sand and not on a base of bedrock. Bedrock is a further 900 meters down. The trilithons that form the central part are made from cut rose granite, while the outer walls are a blend of limestone and sandstone. The building itself is underground, or at least was underground originally, and the majority of the structure is in fact underwater, which is part of the design. Around the main stone island is essentially a colossal well that plunges down into the depths of the ground. So this island that essentially sits in the centre of this gigantic well is totally independent. There is no access way to it from the side walls. There are, however, 2 supporting thrust beams. They're relatively small, considering the size of this building, but they link the island to the outer wall. My theory regarding the structure is based on a similar building that I saw in a dream. And before you roll your eyes and write me off as woo-woo, just check out my explanation, because it covers all the aspects of this strange megalithic structure. By the way, I think these dreams are past life memories, but you might think it's just my mind subconsciously putting bits of information together and coming up with a conclusion. Either way, check it out, because I think that my explanation covers all the bases. So, if you're interested in the Osireion, please hear me out. Okay, let's talk about the building that I saw in my dreams. So the structure that manifested itself in my dream bore a striking similarity to the Osireion, albeit on a grander scale. It was much, much bigger. And it was slightly different architecturally, being circular, not square. And it too was subterranean, and it had a central island with a body of water all around it. And that was obviously reminiscent of a moat, very much in the same way as the Osireion. And it went deep into the ground, as does the Osireion. And it had megalithic stone trilithons linked in a circular way, much in the same way as Stonehenge, but much, much larger. And this structure really was a lot bigger than the Osireion. There were small rooms all around the outside walls of the building. So that's on the outer part of the moat. And these rooms were all sealed, each with a very large block. And the entrance was different to the Osireion. It was through a shaft, not through a walkway. And there was a room prior to entering it, but to my memory there wasn't one on the other side, whereas there is in the Osireion. Let's have a look at the clues, those little mysteries that make up this structure, because it's these clues that will provide the answers. So what are the clues? Number 1, monumental megaliths of rose granite, arranged into a sequence of trilithons. Number 2, the exterior walls are polygonal in nature, and they're adorned with tiny little blocks, rounded cornerstone blocks, pillow-shaped blocks, indents, and nubs, and they have a striking resemblance to similar stonework in Peru. Number 3, it's an underground structure that has a multi-story stone island surrounded by a moat of water and encased in a stone block room. Clue number 4 is the missing parts of the structure. So the 2 inset areas, which reveal the location of 2 items that are no longer there. There's even an area around one of those that shows that it had some kind of outline, which I will explain later on. Number 5 are the drill holes in one of the inset areas, and also some small drainage trenches around the island. So those are the clues that we're going to address. Now we're going to look at them one by one, and I'm going to give you an explanation for each one of those. So let's look at what's behind each of these clues one by one, starting with the massive megalithic cut blocks in rose granite, which is set into a series of trilithons. So these are one of the most crucial elements to this design, as the size of the blocks and the type of stone creates the piezoelectric energy, both within the water and around the chamber, that makes this a healing centre. And the water concentrates this energy and enables it to cycle naturally. The next clue to address are the polygonal outer walls. So this is the wall that surrounds the moat. And in that wall there are tiny blocks, there are large blocks, there are curved corner blocks, there are pillow shapes, there are indents into the blocks, and there are nubs sticking out of the rocks. And there is an incredible similarity to similar stonework in Peru, the other side of the world. This part of the building does not need to be cut stone, but it does need to be strong and capable of withstanding both earthquakes and the test of time. Based on what I've seen in my dreams, this part of the Osireion is not cut blocks. It's artificially created geopolymer blocks. And the tiny blocks are designed to break or crumble in an earthquake, releasing tension that might otherwise destroy the building. Curved corners provide added strength and are not difficult to create if using geopolymer. Pillow shapes, indents and nubs are simply a byproduct of creating the walls using geopolymer. This part of the building doesn't have to look good. It's not important. It's the functionality that matters. So I'm not going to go into the reason for the nubs or the indents or the pillows in this particular episode, as I've already covered it already in previous episodes on the stonework of the ancients. And I've also discussed the similarity to Peru. And the answer is simple. It's basically the same people. But let's keep going because we've got some more clues to address. The next clue is that the building is an underground structure that has a multi-story stone island structure in the center, surrounded by a moat of water, encased in a stone room. And this specific design goes deep down into the earth to maximize the piezoelectric energy, and it provides security for the most valuable thing the ancients had, and enabled the production of a product that extended their lives. And yes, I am talking about what we know today as an ankh, and it is the key of life. I will explain shortly how this all fits together. We now move on to an explanation of the fourth clue, which is the missing parts of the structure, the two areas that are inset that reveal the location of two items that are no longer there. The missing parts, in my opinion, are an obelisk and a large planter containing a very special plant. The obelisk enabled a different type of energy to be received within the structure, and that's radiant energy. So this is the energy that was from the energy grid of our planet, which the Great Pyramid contributed to, and it was used for technology of the ancients, while the planter held the tree of life. This tree or plant was used to create a cure to aging and was distributed through devices that looked like ankhs, or effectively pine cones. The reason the difference between the pine cone and the ankh, if you look at the top of the ankh, it's essentially a pine cone shape. It's just that that was how it was held in place in the stand, which was in the hand. When pulled away from the stand, what you had left was the collection device, which was the pine cone shape. There are many depictions of the Mesopotamian gods with these pine cones and with the same plant. So extracting what was necessary from the plant, using the ankh or the pine cone, and then being able to process it using that device and using it for longevity. So there's both the pine cone and the plants in a lot of the depictions from Mesopotamia. And it's that plant and that device which was being used in this location. And very few equivalent depictions appear in the art of ancient Egypt. Only the ankh remains, the key of life. Now let's look at the fifth clue briefly. So that's the drill hole in one of the inset areas and the small drainage trenches around the island. So these are simply the mechanisms for maintaining the water level and ensuring that the plant gets what it needs. At this point, a few intriguing questions still remain unanswered. So let's have a look at these questions. Why an island? Well, the energy through the water must be continuous, so it must not be broken. Hence, the circle of water, so the water could spiral with the energy. Next question. Why 5 stories deep? Well, the water was required to circle the island, as I said, and to a good depth to enable the water to receive and store the piezoelectric energy and of course to keep it cycling within the water. There is also a room concealed inside the island, which can only be reached by diving down through the water. Next question. What are the small rooms or alcoves, and why are the ceilings there indented? So most of the stone for the walls is geopolymer, but there has to be at least one wall or ceiling that is cut from natural stone. Otherwise, it's not possible to monitor those little rooms and provide the necessary frequency vibration in that area. The geopolymers just don't have that ability. If these little rooms are so important, what's kept in them? Well, there are seeds, ankhs, the ones ready for use, also the machines for creating the ankhs, and machines for the maintenance and vibratory needs of the complex. The water level has to be kept at a certain level for the energy. Too much energy being produced meant the water had to be reduced, and too little energy, the water level had to be increased. The steps indicate the range of levels that the water was kept at. What was the blind chamber for? So it's also known as the sarcophagus chamber. Well, that wasn't in the dream, so my guess is that it's where some technology and information or such like was stored quite securely, I'd say too. Why was this place so important to Ramses? So Ramses is Seti's son, and he was known as Ramses the Great. He lived for a very long time, and as a child he spent a lot of time while the temple was being built, and he also spent time in the Osireion, it is assumed. So one could guess that as a child he would have enjoyed seeing the water in this area and probably have jumped in and swam around, and might have been a contributing factor to why he lived so much longer than most other pharaohs. Why was there a slight indent around each of the massive granite blocks, as well as one of the sunken areas? So there's two sunken areas where something's missing, but there's only an indent around one of them. And there's good reason for this. And it's simply to do with cleaning. So one of those indents, which is missing the item, was where the plant was held, and the plant would overflow from the stone box that it was in. And so the box itself was never cleaned. It didn't need to be cleaned. It had the plant in it, and the plant overflowed around it. But the other items, the massive granite blocks and the obelisk, had to be cleaned on a regular basis. And over hundreds and hundreds of years of this cleaning process taking place, the base of these objects had a kind of roughness about it, as if they'd been encircled. The cleaning process involved vibration, and if you just compare it to, say, water blasting, so you're water blasting from the top down, and when you get to the bottom, you're blasting into the corner, and it used the vibrationary technique, but it also left a very slight indent around each of the blocks and around the base of the obelisk. Why is an obelisk needed for energy when the stones were producing piezoelectric energy? Well, the obelisk was for radiant energy, which was used with the tools and the devices of the ancients, while piezoelectric energy is a form of healing energy, which is completely different. Was this structure fully underground and totally covered? Well, I suspect not, because of the obelisk and the need for the plant to get light. But this is a different structure to the one I have seen in my dreams, so that I cannot be completely sure of. But I can show you what the structure looked like above ground of the one I saw in the dream, and this is it. So what were the flower of life diagrams all about on the wall? Well, they were carved or painted on at a much later date. It must have been some residual memory of what this place was actually for, because the flower of life means longevity, and so someone seemed to know what the place was all about. And what about the seemingly melted stone? Well, this is actually a red herring. It only looks like it's melted. It is actually the unfinished portion of where the dynastic Egyptians, i.e. Seti's workers, had got to while smoothing down the polygonal blocks, and it would be not even seen if they had had the time to finish off the job and smooth down all the outer wall to prepare it for the hieroglyphs and the pictures that they were putting on there. So hopefully that answers all the leftover questions. If you do have more questions, please let me know in the comments. In the meantime, let's pull this all together and do a summary and an overview of this amazing structure. In my opinion, the Osireion was a temple of life. Obviously, we need to call any ancient structure a temple or maybe a tomb. It just sounds nicer than the machine of life. Okay, so I'm being a bit cynical, but yeah, I think it is nicer to call it a temple of life. If you're familiar with my channel, you'll be aware that I speak about the dreams that I've had of this ancient culture, and in a place not just about Egypt, but also a place that I guess is identified today as Atlantis. It was called Tantau in my dreams, however. As I mentioned, I've seen in one of these dreams a place that reminds me of the Osireion. It was a different shape, but the commonalities were very strong. The building I speak of was also underground, but was accessed through a shaft, not through a long tunnel, as is the case of the Osireion. The building was circular, not square, and it had the same massive pillars and trilithons on a central island. The trilithons were continuous in a circle, much the same way as Stonehenge is, but it was much bigger. It was much more powerful in this way, but the structure, a circular one, is more difficult to achieve, so that's probably why the oblong structure was chosen for this smaller version. The outer wall had a series of smaller rooms, each one sealed. The centre of the building was a massive obelisk. From the ground, it looked like a large walled tower with an obelisk sticking up out of the top of it. An energy source repelled anything from falling or being blown into the hole. If one had been able to look down from above the well or the tower, one would have seen a tree at the base of the obelisk. Light was bounced into the structure in a way that lit up the inside of the well, right down and through and into the building. The tree was a special plant that provided longevity to the ancient ones, but it alone was only capable of extending life by a certain amount, maybe 900 to 1,000 years. But combine it with a small device designed to leverage the plant through frequency and vibration, it created something that could not only prolong life indefinitely, but with the use of the ankh, it could also reverse the effects of aging. The waters that surrounded the island had special healing and nutritive powers that were useful to both the people and the plant. The water was clear and pure, not like today. It could be drunk or bathed in without any risk. Deep down in the water, about 3/4 of the way down, is a secret room. Only the keepers knew how to access the room. I saw them dive down, but I did not see inside the room. I think there is some kind of equipment down there, but I cannot describe it. As for the flower of life, well, it's clear that some knowledge of the purpose of this site must have lingered for thousands of years after it was no longer used. The flower of life, from my perspective, is a design that represents the secrets of life or longevity. It's no wonder the site was likely adopted for the cult of Osiris, but it is difficult to imagine it being built for any reason other than one that benefited a large number of people. It was essentially their key to life. Imagine how far we'd go today to achieve that. The plant alone will extend life. The waters will heal. But the mechanism to increase the efficacy using the ankh was required to reverse the effects of aging. How much would we pay for that today? As for the plant, well, I have spent my life searching for this plant. I know how it looks. I know how it smells. And I remember the structure of its roots, the shape of its leaves. I hope one day to find it before it's too late for me and the world. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing because I've got lots more to tell you about.